Everyone, I'd like to call the Water and Sewer Utility Committee meeting to order on Thursday, February 25th. I'll call the meeting to order and we'd like to approval of the agenda. Now, before we start, I have something to add myself. I know at the council meeting the other night, I was questioned on where we are with negotiations with the fiber op. I don't know if the manager director was aware or they heard, but I sent an email yesterday asking to be on the agenda, but I guess it didn't get on here. So we either add it to the approval of the agenda or to new business. Where would you like it to go?
Add it.
Add it to the approval of the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, fine with that?
Yeah.
Councillor McAleer?
Fine.
Okay, we'd like add that to an update on where we're at with our fiber op, contract negotiations, things like that. And we'll put that down to EFG.
G. Yep.
Any declarations of conflict of interest?
None.
No, seeing none. Adoption of the previous draft minutes of December 12th, 2024. Moved by Councillor McTaggart, second by Councillor McAleer. Any business arising from those minutes? Mayor Brown, you good?
Sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now we'll get into, we have a few discussions and reports today, so we'll start off with the budget reallocations and the capital. Josh McGinnis is gonna take this. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you, Chair. So the first two reports are simply just for informational purposes. These are budget reallocations. So I'll go through the first one here. The first one is on the capital side. It's to inform committee of the budget transfer requests. So currently these are for informational purposes, just to make the committee aware. The budget transfer requests have been presented through Finance Committee. They're the ones that will action these. So the water and sewer utility had received project invoices from Island Coastal Services Limited for 3 projects that had been completed in years prior. I do believe the years were the 2021 and 2022 fiscals. There was a changeover in staffing at Island Coastal and some invoices were not submitted in a timely fashion, so these are those invoices. So to pay the received invoices, budget reallocations were required. The projects were St. Peter's Road and Belvedere Roundabout. The invoice amount was $288,292.72. Second invoice was for Harley Street reconstruction for $131,160. And the third was for Garfield Street reconstruction for $320,625.24. Attached with those are the actual requests sent across to finance. And that details where the funds were transferred from, available money to the accounts that required it. So the utility hadn't budgeted for those 3 invoices. That's why the transfer requests were required, and the funding come from available funding through other accounts. So for one instance, the water distribution system upgrades had available funding this year, so that was used to even out with St. Peter's Road and Belvedere Roundabout. For the next report is on the.
Just 1 second, Josh. We're
Yep.
still at A,
Correct.
budget allocations, okay?
Just a question, Josh. Those invoices total about $700,000.
$740.
John, 740, they come in from 21-22. I mean, it's a little alarming that those invoices are now just coming to light in the tune of $700,000 that Island Coastal missed. Are we able to track that back? Like, are we able to verify that? I mean, cause it seems like even you indicated that we didn't have the budget for that, so that leads me to believe we have $700,000, something that was over budget of $700,000 being invoiced 3 years later. To me, that just sent some flags, like, do we have the checks and balances in place to verify that this work was completed, that is the work, like, and this is an honest mistake. I mean, I'm not suggesting we don't pay Island Coastal, I think it's our responsibility to do that due diligence and to ensure before we sign off here and say, we approve that, then, and I'm sure you've done that, so I'll give you an opportunity to answer my questions if you could.
Yep, absolutely. So through the chair to Councilor Matera, that's completely accurate. So we verified the validity of the invoices. And originally there would have been budget for these, but where it is projects from 2001 and 2022, the funding there, assuming that the invoices were complete, projects were complete, the funding would have just been in, what's the word? I'm thinking of the word. Under budget expenditure essentially is what it would have been. So originally there was funding there, but where the projects were closed out, that amount wasn't carried forward for 2 or 3 years. So that's kind of where it would land there. Originally, the funding was there, but where the project was anticipated closed and completed, that was not carried forward for the 3 years or so.
I'd just like to see, how does this happen? I'm trying to get my head around it. It is a substantial amount of money. So if you have a budget of, doing Harley Street, let's say, and you have a budget of $100, and all the bills are paid, and then you come in, you say, well, we've only spent $75, right? So there's $25 extra, and then when it comes time to do our budgets, year ends, everything, we come back and say, well, we have $25 extra plus this year, and then we tell all our clients we have a surplus budget, and everything is great. And then we come back 3 years later and say, you know what, that surplus that we had is actually false, because now we gotta go find the money and pay that bill. But if you had your budget for Harley Street for $100 and you knew you were $25 to the good, why wasn't that flagged then? Like, how does this happen? Because I know myself, if I was going looking for $700,000, I'd be wanting some answers.
Yep, no, absolutely, Chair, and that's a tremendous question. And on, multi-million-dollar projects, sometimes the numbers get lost in the math a little bit there, and especially if we look at the Harley Street reconstruction, that was a larger project, and at $150,000, depends on change orders and invoicing, and sometimes it goes invoicing in one fiscal versus invoicing in another fiscal. So it is possible that something was missed as far as being able to account for that and realize that, they didn't invoice for a particular amount of work. It also comes a little bit of accountability on the contractor as well, where we do rely on them to submit invoices in a timely fashion. And depending on substantial completion, it depends on the percentage that they submit would be what we would pay, and then that remainder there between the substantial completion and 100% completion can change. So there is possibilities that it was missed by the contractor and we didn't catch it immediately that there was monies owing. I know that there was change over there, and they've completed what they were looking through for invoices and then submitted them, so.
Now, this was a cost shared with Public Works. Is any of this on them, or is it all to us?
Nope, this would be the water and sewer portion of that, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can't speak to what Public Works may or may not have received, but I would imagine they would have received invoices after project completion as well.
So now we expand the scope and we say, okay, the project, instead of being $100, is $1 million. We have $1 million in our budget to pay for this stuff, right? Let's just say.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, you go to substantial completion to completion, everybody says, okay, we're paid, we're all happy, it's turned over, it's good, everybody moves on to another project. So then we're here 3 years later, and Island Coastal says, you know what, you didn't pay this, but it wasn't billed to us. So we had the project approved for $1 million, and now, like, this is a huge amount of money, right? So where is the checks and balances? That's what I can't understand, because I know if I run a business and we're 700,000 to the good, I'm thinking, God, I'm smart, but now if I'm 700,000 to the bad, where's the budget allocations for that? Like, I just can't understand it. This is substantial, and this came on the other night at our monthly meeting. And I was just like, wow, I didn't even know this. It was in our package, but I guess we didn't have our meeting last month, so, I was just kind of blindsided by this, right? So then, now we're here today to discuss it, and what can we do? It's $700,000. I just don't know. Okay, go ahead, Richard, you wanna try to explain?
Well, I can't fully explain, but I'll add some information to it and how we need to improve things going forward with our accounting of it. And some of this, it's holdback payments, and the holdback, we still need to pay the money. So, and we need to figure out as a corporation with the finance department, how are we gonna account for that? Because that holdback is actually now gonna get expensed back to the year of the project on our books, cause it's work that took place back then. So there's a couple of ways that we have looked at it in the past. We've kind of booked that off and expensed it. And even if you look back to the 23-24 budget, we were always carrying forward some of that money, like Pond Street, Garfield Street, they're all in there. Just after 3 or 4 years, you keep asking, well, why are you still budgeting for Pond Street? And it's because these trailing expenses do come in. But in 24-25, we dropped Pond Street, Garfield Street, Harley Street. But I'm looking at the budget document for 23-24. We had 100,000. We had money there to cover those late invoices, and these are very, very late. So typically it's 1 year after substantial completion of the project, we'd expect to be releasing the holdback. We've had time for it, and we need to work with finance. So is that gonna be something that, okay, that expense occurred, we have an invoice that has a holdback number on it, we know we're gonna have to pay that sometime in the future, unless it's a holdback that we're holding back that they still need to do work, and then until they do that work, then we're not gonna release the money. But there's kind of a timing piece to it, but when it is 3 and 4 years later, it's tricky. And we just got caught this year because of it, because when I do look at the 23-24 budget, we were carrying those trailers for coming invoices.
But just to the contractor's point, or to the contractor's piece, it just, I guess when you look at this, it looks like Island Coastal had a receivable for 740,000 for a couple of years, which I would.
That's on them, that's
Find
not us.
surprising
That's to our benefit, right? We're earning
No,
interest on the
I
money.
get that, but I would think that they perhaps would have been looking for that before
They look for it when they need it.
23 and 24. Like anyway, it's probably between both parties. Things are.
So that was gonna be my point as well, is that, there's, the onus is on our vendors or our contractors to submit timely invoices, so we need to reinforce that. I think in this particular case, would you explain there, Richard, standard operating procedure, I get that, what you explained. What we're seeing here today seems to be forgotten invoices sent to us several years later. It seems, that's what I thought I heard, that they missed the invoicing like that. This is more of a practice, so one, we need to make them more accountable so we can get the expense out, but at the same time, to our contractors, like I said, like, who can carry a $700 receivable that, well, they know they can. But it does have a trickle-down effect, as we see here today. So we've spent 15 minutes on this topic because of their neglect to put their invoices in a timely manner so that we could fulfill our obligations. So again, I don't think it's a fault in anybody, it's probably just something that we need to make sure we're doing right across the city as a whole, like we're contracting out all the time. I get what you're saying about how things carry over, that, and holdbacks and.
And to our advantage, right?
Yeah,
We're paying
that's a standard operating
a
procedure.
couple $100,000
Yeah.
invoice years later, when a couple $100,000 isn't the same value that it was back then.
but there's reasons why we're doing that. But anyways,
No, it's the reasons we're doing it, because they're billing 2 years later.
yeah, but that shouldn't be the case.
And companies do that because, Councilor Duran knows that, they get caught up with the work. They're gonna work first to get that work and get that billable. But Richard, the substantial completion is usually 1 year, right? Right? And then, like I said, as I said the other night, the province doesn't only have a substantial completion date, they also have a warranty date. They have 2 years by the time you get your money. But can I ask, Richard, this is not, or Josh, this is not money that we have to take from somewhere else. It's already been budgeted, right? Because it's already been budgeted under water distribution system
Richard says
upgrades.
he has 100,000 in each of those
Yeah.
project years.
Go to page 6, you'll see the transfer from, transfer to. Right?
But that's money that we had in this year's budget allocated to those projects, so
Right.
that we need to move that money to these accounts so that we can pay these bills, and so that the money is properly accounted for our
But those billables, those accounts receivable from ICS, right? That was already budgeted. We had, like, we knew what the cost was, we just didn't pay it 2 years ago,
Yes,
correct?
or even 3 and 4 years
Right.
ago.
But Richard, look what we're doing. And this is what was brought up earlier by the chair. Wellfield protection, $368,719. Wellfield protection, $150,834. So that $1 million budget we have here, it's down now to $500,000. That's right?
Yep.
So, Councillor Duran, I think this is what we've been doing in the past. This is sort of an account we can take money from to pay our billables. So, if we're going to, and again, Josh, if we're gonna protect our well fields, in our budget, it clearly indicates on page 100, some of the areas that we have to look at to purchase. Did we reach out to purchase them?
Yep, through the chair to the mayor. There was one property for sure, that we had
Purchased.
conversations with. There was a second one we were looking at as well. I think there might even been a third that had reached out to us, but we were in conversations with one. And it didn't work out between the two, between us and the individual. So we were actively seeking to purchase a piece of land out there. But we don't use that funding as like a slush fund, we'll say, to
Well,
pay
here it
other
is.
things. But it was seen that this year, between now and the end of fiscal, that was probably not gonna be used for the purchase or acquisition of lands for wellfield protection. So it was available approved funds, and that's why we transferred it into the other accounts to pay for these.
So, Mr. Chair, just a second point. Richard and I, our director, have already sent another letter to the Minister of Agriculture about their responsibility, Richard, about purchasing buffer zones. So if we're asking them to do that, we should be expending this fund to purchase land. So you know what, we got skin in the game. Like if we just keep putting it in there and don't, and like it says, look, you've identified the areas. Like, you had 3 offers, were they 3 offers or just 3 discussions?
Three discussions, so we had made an offer on one, and then there was some back and forth debating on price, and we just couldn't come to an amicable price. So we are actively looking at that, but we can't force people to sell.
No.
That's not the route we're looking at, so if people aren't interested, or if we can't come to a price that makes sense, kind of the market value, we don't wanna overpay for something, cause that's not fiscally responsible, so we're actively looking to make that protection, but we have to have willing participants as well. That's kind of where we're
We're
at.
asking for legislation, right, Richard? We're asking for legislation that would, you know, if we had to expropriate it, we'll expropriate it because it's to protect our well fields. So, I don't know if that increases the cost, or we just come to a market value and pay that sum. Anyways, Josh, I think that if we're gonna put it in the budget, I think we have to start expending it. We have to start buying those lands.
Yep, absolutely, and we're in full support of that. Yep.
Okay, so just to touch on, you know, the director has said, you know, it looks good on us, we didn't have to pay for that for 3 years, that bill. But here we are taking money out of this year's budget for that. Where was the money that was budgeted for that? So that's the question I'm asking. So if we put $1 million in to pay for that, we were only billed so much. Where did that extra money go? So we're coming back 3 years later, now taking the money from elsewhere.
Yep.
So where was that pot to pay for that?
Absolutely, so there's several options where it could have been, used to balance another capital account, or it could have been seen as a surplus and it was money not borrowed. Is what it could be, is, you know, if we anticipated borrowing X million dollars, but we ended up not needing that, then it would just be a reduced amount we would have borrowed and paid on, so. There's I'd have to go back and look exactly, but there's a greater chance that it was just not money borrowed.
Okay? Makes sense if that's the case, but I just don't wanna see, here we're going with the surplus budget, saying, you know, we have
Yeah.
2 million extra, and then we spend it, and then now we're coming robbing Peter to pay for Paul now, right? So, it's just,
Mr. Chair, so would we not have project managers that would oversee the, you know, the job timelines? Like I think Boyd Woodard or someone like that, would they not be tracking some of this stuff to make sure payments or bills were submitted?
Yep, so through the chair, to the mayor, we do have staff on, or personnel on staff that do look after this, and a lot of it falls to them, and we try to track it as best possible, timelines, invoices, validity of it. We do go back and make sure that the invoices that are coming in are work that's completed. Sometimes we have consultants involved and they do verify those invoices as well, especially on the larger projects like these. Our consultants are a big piece of it.
Excuse me, Chair, and there has been some discussion at finance too on this dynamic, on this issue, and I think there's with CFO Dan and Lane, and to what Richard has, you know, shared, there's efforts made to try and improve this flow, you know, projects, money allocated, spent within a budget year, in and out within the fiscal year is what the effort is trying to be, so.
Perfect world, John.
No, I mean,
think
it's
we'll
on their radar and they're trying to.
I know with our company, some bills we send out 18 months later, cause the client calls and said, are you gonna bill us? So imagine if you're a bigger company. But, Mr. Chair, if I can just get back to Josh, Richard, are we gonna really focus on well field purchasing? Like, we're gonna buy some of that land to protect these well fields? Like that has to be a commitment this year. I think we have do we have $1 million in this year's budget for well field?
Yeah, that's correct.
We did, but yes, I mean,
No.
For the 25, 26, yeah.
26, okay.
Yeah.
No, appreciate the
We
support,
had
I
a
mean,
million
it
in
is,
24, 25.
Yeah.
So what
And we
happened to
just,
that?
we just spent 500,000 for these unpaid invoices. That's where it came from.
Probably transfer over, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it looks like, no, we're only transferring 250 over from wellfield protection, isn't it?
No, if you go to page 6, it says
126, yeah.
water distribution system upgrades,
Oh, that was considered under wellfield protection?
right below it,
there's 2 of them.
well field right below it.
but they add up to 250.
Yeah, they add up to 250 though, that's why, you said 500,000.
Well, yeah, then there's well field protection for the next one over, 150,000. See that, third line,
Third line's 150, 100, 255, right?
150, 830, or 150,834. And I don't know how Josh split it from water distribution system upgrades and well field protection, but the amount is 368,000.
One is the from and the other is the to.
Two, yeah, they're mixing them up there. There's only $250,000 allocated out of the wellfield protection fund to offset this thing, is what I can see here. Am I wrong?
No, you're right.
That's correct, yeah.
So can I just clarify, transfer from water distribution system upgrades, see that?
There's 4 regions
And
here.
and transfer to, this is for St. Peter's Road and Belvedere Roundabout, 351,000, correct?
Correct.
So then you go down to the next one, water distribution system and well field protection.
So the two of them added together give you the 360.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So
it's not,
what-
but I'm saying from the
what
line
was-
item that it's coming from. Your argument was, we had $1 million in well field protection.
Right.
And we're expending 500,000 on this, we're not, we're expending 250 of it.
So it's 100,000
That
that
line item is what I'm saying.
is the
It's just the
100,000 there?
255 and the 15834.
It's just,
Anyway,
No, that's all right, Richard, I see it.
you see it now, so one side is the from and the other is.
So it's still, it's, okay, so it's 250,
so we have
right? So $250,000.
Yeah.
That we can't use to buy land.
land, yeah,
So
If
if
we
we're gonna put the
approve it.
money in,
if we approve it.
let's spend the money and buy land.
So do we have to pass that?
No, it's already been passed.
Yeah,
Just-
council approved it.
Oh, yeah, that was the other night, yeah,
He was
geez.
joking when it was passing, but hey,
Yeah, sorry. I
It
forgot.
would have come to you ideally before it goes there for your information and
This
knowledge.
FYI,
yeah,
Okay, well, we spent a lot of time on that, it was already passed.
yeah.
Let's go.
But you gotta question it, right?
Oh, I know.
Oh,
I-
yeah, you
that's-
need-
I'm
well, you need to
questioning it,
understand
I'm
it,
questioning
yeah.
and understand, that's why I brought,
Information
the question up, but, okay.
There you go. Okay, now we'll go to 6B. Or is that all tied in?
So, thank you, Chair. This is, the next one, this is more on the operational side of things. Again, inform committee of the budget transfer requests. The water and sewer utility requires the following budget transfer requests to balance operational expenditures with approved funding. Currently, there's $80,000 that would need to go to the repair and maintenance of our buildings account, due to unplanned repairs for Desperate lift station pumps. As well, $15,000 from our repair and maintenance for vehicles. Or to that, sorry, 15,000 to our repair and maintenance for vehicles, due to greater than expected vehicle repair costs. And then $140,000 to our repair and maintenance for infrastructure and water. So, greater than expected water main and water valve repairs and maintenance. So, some expenses were greater than expected or budgeted this year. And currently, these are the accounts we're looking to transfer to. In the request, it details where they're from. And this was submitted through finance as well. So on our regular wages part-time, we had in excess of funds this year, or we anticipate, as well as our repair and maintenance for equipment. We had an excess of funds, and that's what we were looking to balance the accounts with.
To the chair.
Yeah.
Josh, just on the regular wages, I assume that's just vacancy management in the way of,
Correct, so that was, I believe that's through our part-time account, so there may have been more wages available there than were necessary. We've looked at that this year and we've tightened things up a little bit, but basically that vacancy management.
so on that, I'm just wondering, Chair, and again, maybe it's just a practice here that I'm not familiar with. Generally, when you have vacancy, you're able to possibly, fill other areas from an HR perspective. So here you're allowed to do vacancy with wages to pay operational project as well. Yeah. That's an approved,
It's not ideal, but the money is there in the budget that we can shift over there. But
wages.
so it's, I think the world recognizes it's a challenging time to recruit, and we weren't able to recruit all the part-time employees that we needed, so there is money available in that account. So it's an operational account that has money, and we can move it over there, but your finance questioned us on it, cause ideally you don't wanna take money from wages, because typically wages is a well-known quantity, and you don't wanna be setting yourself up for the future. So in the budgeting, again, you need to recognize that, okay, you did last year use money from wages to fund your equipment expenses, so you need to take that into account when you do your budgeting in the following year. So that's typically why you don't wanna take from wages. Wages is often a fairly well-known quantity. You don't wanna be taking from that account if you can avoid it. But we can see that, and our part-timers are laid off now, so we know that there will be money left in that account, so we can move it over to take care of the expenses this year.
Okay, thank you. And so maybe to Councillor McAleer, if you could just take that back to your committee, I'd like to know, I'm curious to know if that's a practice that goes on in all departments.
From
with
wages
wage transfer.
to
Yeah.
other budget,
Or other operational budget items outside of
in particular wages.
Yep. Anything to do with an HR side of things, I'm curious to know if that's a practice, like, I think it's odd, so I'll approve it, but I think it's an odd, like, and I guess I'm just speaking from experience, I just think it's an odd thing. If it's an approved practice here, so be it, I don't like to just blindly say, yes, I think that's a great way to do that, I don't know if that is, I'm certain you got your approval, obviously to do it.
But if you have to pay a bill and you can transfer it from another account instead of borrowing from the line of credit,
Yeah.
you transfer. That,
But it all,
That's-
I get that, I get
that's an
your
accounting issue.
simple logic of like that, just transfer, but I think what it does is, when you look at it from an HR perspective, when you are budgeting for resources and resource allocation throughout the year, if you're taking money out of there, you could be also then setting an expectation those positions are not needed because the funding was less than what it was in previous years. So if you're going in asking for $1 million, but you're only spending 500 because you couldn't fill a vacancy and you're spending that money elsewhere, it could, when we're looking at it, it could be, well, do we need all of that money? Type thing, right? So you're just, it's a rob Peter, pay Paul, same scenario here, like, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's wrong.
I know the province and the feds, if you don't spend the money and you go back for it next year, you don't get it. I don't think we're on the same principle.
It's fine. I'm just asking.
No, it's a fair question.
It is.
Because like you can say, well, we need 5 people.
Yeah.
You get their wages and they say, okay, look, we're gonna take that and we're gonna get a bigger truck and we're gonna get nicer
That's my
furniture.
point, like you're
Yeah.
taking it through, you're asking it, but knowing that we're gonna have vacancies and then using that vacancy dollars to pay for other things. It's not
And it's,
optically right.
Anyway, had the position's been filled, you wouldn't have had to transfer.
Well, we'd be asking where the other 120 is gonna come from,
Exactly, we'd have to
right?
find it
So
somewhere
they'd be
else.
finding it from somewhere else. But they found it,
projectional.
Yeah, that's a capital
it should be
account.
coming from other operational expenses, not HR, my opinion. That's just my opinion. Anyways, I won't dwell on that, but
We have
that's,
Josh, who's acting superintendent down at the wastewater treatment plant because we can't find someone, right? So we're not paying for that position. And how many months is that now?
July or August last year?
Keep working at it, buddy, you're doing a good job.
I didn't know that.
Don't say that too
I'm down to see it. You should pop in to see the plant.
Some days it's pretty strong. Thank you for that. Any other questions on the next one? Who's
a
got
lot
the,
talking this one already.
yeah,
Thanks for services.
request for service, there we go, Josh.
Perfect, thank you, Chair. So the utility had received a request for service. This was from the PEI, Department of Social Development and Housing. The purpose of this report is to inform committee of this request. It's in the subdivision of Miltonville Park, PID 283226. I guess the recommendation we would be looking at would be approve the request for service received from the Department of Social Development and Housing.
27.
So a request for water and sewer service had been received from the PEI Department of Social Development and Housing, represented by Matt Langell, for a new subdivision in Miltonville Park, PID number 283226. This property will be a subdivision planned for 5 phases of development. The communicated phase 1 they're doing looking to do now, it proposes a mix of single, duplex and multi-unit residential housing. Currently, phase 1 is planned for 60 total units. All costs for the development would be borne by the property owner. The customer will be charged 25% surcharge for service outside the city. So we're looking for recommendation to move that forward to council to approve that service. Attached as well is the request and the preliminary design or the layout of that phase 1.
To the chair, just, sorry if I understand this correctly, they're asking for our support to put infrastructure in place? Is that, I'm not quite understanding,
Just water.
just water?
Is it water and wastewater or just water?
Water and wastewater, so they're seeking to connect our system, it would be fully on them to install and develop it, but
Okay.
ultimately that connection is what they're looking for.
Do we incur any cost as a result of that?
No.
And the reason I brought that up is there was an announcement made yesterday, I saw with the Minister of Housing and with the Canadian, with the government, and then of
Erskine
course
Smith, Federal
um,
Housing.
for infrastructure money that is going to be.
Canadian Housing Infrastructure
Yes,
Fund.
yeah, and it talked about, supporting infrastructure like stormwater and water. So anyway, I was just, it clicked there with this particular one, but probably not related.
It's
I'm sure we'll be talking-
$86.2 million over 10 years for the province.
Yeah.
So if you take, for
But
example,
there's an application process, so
so if
I
you take, for example, Skyline Place, Mike Cassidy's project,
yeah, he'd be a part.
he would apply for that.
So
because
we would, but it's at municipalities too.
Yeah.
So we may look to that fund for some of our projects. I know we were talking, the group that keeps coming in to want to do the retrofit down on King Street in that
Right.
area.
Correct.
And we keep talking about
Is that
the
an
aging
example?
infrastructure. Well, I don't know if
That's
that's an
something we can
example,
look
but
into.
that's something that we should be
Yeah.
considering as municipality to apply to see if there's funding, because that group, and I apologize, I can't recall the group, but they come in with all the.
Steve
street-
Dunn and CADC was it?
CADC's coming with the 3 or 4 blocks of streets there, and one of the things that we keep talking about is the infrastructure underground and how that's gonna be impacted all the way through, so. I was just trying to,
Stakeholders presentations, wasn't it?
yeah, it was one of the stakeholders, yeah. Anyway, just something to think about, I don't know, guys, if that's in your bailiwick,
So-
but.
Go ahead, Councillor Leclerc.
Just for clarity and understanding for myself, the 25% surcharge, is that just like a one-time on the value with a hookup, or is that a 25% an ongoing 25?
I can answer that.
Sorry,
Now, what happens is anything outside the city, if there's a single house or a development like this, if they apply to use our water and sewer, well, the water, it's 25% extra that you'd have to pay for your water service
per year.
per bill. Yep, per year, or anybody outside the city. Council determined that a number of years ago. And every time someone applies, they have to come back to council to ask for it. So then we can determine whether it's a good or bad thing. So on the flip side of that, with these new developments and stuff, it's always talked about, we don't know if we have enough water capacity. So here we're going outside the city and doing that. Do we have enough water capacity for development within the city guidelines? So where are we close? Do we have extra? Can we tap into extra things? And this is what we were talking about, if you tapped into Cornwall and Stratford, if we need more water capacity. So we don't want the development within the city to be halted because of water capacity, and then we're giving others outside the city. So how is our water capacity? I know you don't have that answer right off the top of your head, but are we getting close? Do we have access to these well fields, or how are we looking?
Yep, absolutely. No, that's a tremendous question, and it's a great question to bring, especially when a request like this or this size comes to light. We've got great capacity. I don't have the exact number for you at this moment. I could probably look that up. But with, in particular, this request, we do have an agreement in place with Miltonville Park that they are to be provided with so much water. It was put in place when we did put the Miltonville well field in. So there was an agreement and kind of in place for that. And with this development, we'll look at the numbers. I do believe it's getting closer to what that agreement level is. But as far as our capacity within the city, we've still got capacity, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Leclerc.
So just on staying with the capacity question to understand, like for the city's needs, I think a capacity, or I'm understanding, if I said like utilize it or capacity or efficiency of your plant, are you at 80%, 90%? So would that be how that question would be answered in terms of a 100% metric if? you know, if the full capacity of the city's water, I guess, supply is 100%, like, I guess, I don't know, is it possible to get an answer how close it is to that, or is that the right context?
Yeah, absolutely. So through the chair to Councillor McAleer, we could look that up, based on the allowable consumption from our well fields. You know, we could give you a number on what the capacity is, and we could review consumption, and what we do for extraction. And it depends on the time of year heavily, how much, we are pumping. But we could give you a seasonal number, basically, like in the summer, we'd bet X capacity, in the winter, we're at X. We could look into that, absolutely.
But suffice to say, like, with all the demand that's coming and all the growth that's coming, it's not, you know, we're not gonna be, I guess, we're living, on a power thing today in the island, there's, challenges with power, we're never gonna be, anyway, we're able to, I guess, meet the expected demands, and then as it relates to the 25% surcharge, I guess that's just a way of recouping some of the capital costs that the
Well,
city's already incurred.
not in the capital costs, cause they have to pay for it themselves. It's just us giving them water, and the taxpayer, the city taxpayer is paying for that, right? So anybody outside the city, if you want the water, then you have to pay a premium rate.
Yeah, no, and I was thinking more of from the capital point of view, there's water available, and that was available for the you know, the infrastructure that we've already provided, and they're hooking into it, like, yeah. So anyway,
Councillor McAleer, Josh and Mr. McEwen can tell you that our consumption today is about what it was in 1994. And we have almost 11,000 more residents. Like I think we've done quite well.
no,
And Richard knows this better than anyone, Mr. Chair. We've been talking about this regional water, wastewater utility since 2021. They have lots of water in Cornwall and Stratford. And when you look at the customers, for the 4,000 customers that come from Stratford or to our wastewater facility, we're charging them a 15% surcharge. Because that 15% surcharge was something that was negotiated by the province, I believe.
Yes, definitely, yep.
And we have 1,800 water and wastewater clients in Cornwall. Like, the quicker we look at this regional water and wastewater utility, it's all gonna be better for us.
So how do we do that?
Well, Richard, how many times have we brought it up at these capital area mayors meetings to say, look, let's do it?
We keep asking.
We keep asking.
It's still the same as policing services.
Same thing.
You know, we've asked, and I know when you first got in a number of years ago, we had these meetings and everything was going ahead, and then we seemed to kind of calm down. And we keep bringing it up every few months
Yeah.
to see if we can get it started again,
It
right?
floats its ugly head every couple of years or 18 months.
Are you talking other services too, or are you just talking?
Yeah, no, we were talking
Shared
police.
services,
Whole gamut.
Yes.
Yeah, and the same as fire trucks and all
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
fire stations, all this, everybody's buying their big things everywhere. So it's a way that we can all collaborate together to save money and still provide the services that we want.
Yeah, put it all on the table. Parks, police, fire.
So,
I'll move it.
Councillor McAleer, you have to speak to your buddies down there on the 5th floor.
Boys.
I'll move it if we need to move it to council, is that what we're looking for, guys?
I think this was already done, wasn't it?
No, it's,
Not this one. Okay, we're going down to the crew cab, 6D. So we moved by.
Yep.
You need a mover?
correct.
Yeah. Second?
Second?
Yep.
Councillor. Charles. And then, there. Okay, now we're jumping to 6D, crew cab.
Thank you, Chair. Right now, this is a report, we're looking to acquire 3 new half-ton work trucks for the utility. 2025 half-ton crew cab 4x4s. The report purpose here is to inform council and committee the results of the public request for quotes and recommended purchase as detailed herein. the recommendation utility has is that council, as per the conditions of the public request for quotes, accepts the low bid submission from Fair Isle Ford for the purchase of 3 2025 half-ton crew cab 4x4 work trucks in the amount of $55,600 plus applicable taxes each. In December 2024, the Public Works Department had issued a public request for quotes, 2025 half-ton crew cab trucks for the Parks and Rec Department. Public opening of the tender followed immediately after closing, and there were 3 submissions as follows. Fair Isle Ford was the low bidder at $55,600 plus applicable tax. Based on the results of the public tendering process and review of the submissions, the department recommends award to the lowest compliant bidder, which was Fair Isle Ford. We've confirmed with Fair Isle Ford and internally that they will maintain the prices for water and sewer to go out and utilize this tendering process. And we're seeking to move that forward to council.
Yeah, just one second. I know, so this is Public Works went out to tender, right?
Correct.
So they got 3 trucks, so, or.
They went out for 1 truck.
Okay.
Yep.
So then we look at it and say, okay, you know, you did a good job, we're gonna piggyback on that.
Correct.
So our procurement allows that, to do that, rather than us going out and buying our own trucks or going to tender for our own stuff?
Yeah, we did confirm with them and they're accepting of that.
Who's accepting, like the finance? Procurement?
Yep. So their question was if the vendor was acceptable to that, because originally the tender was for 1 truck, and that makes a difference to the vendor, and the vendor's willing to keep the same pricing. And that's what procurement was curious on, and they're acceptable of that.
Okay. Counselor,
And
Okay.
Josh, are those the exact same specs?
Those are the exact same, correct.
I am concerned this is gonna come to council and it's going to raise procurement questions. You know, that process was put out for tender for a different purpose and just your analogy of piggybacking onto that, probably makes things more efficient, I get that. There is a bit of a discrepancy between the other applicants, Reliable and Summerside. However, you know, I don't know if they're gonna come back and say, well, we'd like to bid again on 3 trucks, so, you know, they might give a better deal over 3 trucks versus 1. Might be entering a slippery slope, is all I'm saying.
That's a good point.
yeah,
I'm just,
I know
I
it
know you
comes
wanna
up.
comment, so go ahead, but
No, that's good.
it's just a bit of a, I think we're in this again, we
Yep.
keep seeing this coming back and back. I don't think we're trying to circumvent anything, I think we're trying to be efficient and we have that, but we're also, you know, sometimes we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Is this just a better opportunity to go back out to RFP, or sorry, request for a quote and see where the chips may fall on 3 vehicles?
Just
And
before
look-
Richard speaks, Mr. Chair,
Right ahead?
isn't this like J. Frank McCauley Park?
I
Yes.
feel like it's the same thing.
So, guys, I agree, like that's, now, can I just ask, this is in our 2-page policy? Procurement policy? Okay,
Yep, so the piece that I want to add is that this would be with council support. So council needs to be supportive of this because this was a tender that was put out for one truck. And we are looking at the pricing. My fear is with all the tariff discussions in vehicles that I'd rather, my putting it forward to you for council's consideration, and that it might be in the best interest of council, but if council chooses to have us go out and put out another tender, that is okay as well. When I looked at the current environment with automobiles and tariffs and the scare out there, and when we look at the pricing, that it was 55,000 for a half-ton truck, and that we had three bids come in, and the department was looking to get the vehicles, and that the dealer was willing to honor that pricing, which could change even in this short amount of time. But again, it's totally up to council, whether council would prefer that we go out to tender again and see where the prices come in for 3, or if we wanna take advantage of this pricing that the dealer has agreed to, and that was in 2024 when they agreed to that price. I mean, it's your decision to make.
Yeah, and I understand, respect that. but we were trying to tighten up our procurement policies and all this stuff, because, you know, it's not always, okay, well, we're gonna jump in and do that, you know? It's, you gotta keep it all the same down the line, and that's, you know, consistent, and it's fair to all players, right? So, you know, go ahead, Councilman Turner.
Well, I think that's my point as well. I mean, we need to be consistent if we're doing something. J. Frank McCauley would be the prime example of this. I just think we're gonna get into this. So I appreciate you saying it doesn't matter either way. I'm not sure, you know, when we're thinking about the tariff and trade war that may happen, you know, buying local or buying Canadian, all three of these are local companies. I'm sure unless these trucks were, you know, this price was fixed, three trucks are sitting on the lot ready to go, and there was a real demand based on what could potentially happen and what we could potentially face from a delivery perspective if the tariffs, I could see that justification. So if you feel that is part of that justification, we should put that in the report for council's consideration as being something that is there. I don't see that right now, but if that's what you're saying is a very high possibility, that might be one reason for us to make a better decision, or a different decision on this. Otherwise, go back to tender and let it be a fair process. That's my point.
And that's why I said, I'll move the resolution, get it second, but I'm gonna vote against it. I'll tell you why. Because of what happened with J. Frank McCauley Park.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's these looming or the pending trade war between Canada and the USA, but you know what? That's gonna be there. It's,
Yeah.
whether it happens now, maybe the vehicles can't get shipped for about a month, 2 months, whatever. I'm just saying that, look, we went through this with the J. Frank McCauley Park, and we said, look, you can't just saddle a tender with another tender, right? But again, Josh, where would that be in our procurement, that 2-page procurement policy? Do you have the quote where, well, you have it, Richard?
Yeah, well, the piece to it is that council can
In the
do
best
something,
interest
yeah,
of
in the,
the city.
in the
Best
best
interest
interest of
is-
council. So the other thing that I did do was go back and I reviewed the tender that was issued to see if there was any language to say that we might extend that to additional vehicles, and it didn't have it. But I think going forward is something that we would look at including in our tender. Cause the risk for us too is that the dealer says, no, I gave you that price back in November, kind of, we need a time frame on it. The risk in putting that piece into it is then the dealer needs to be thinking, okay, what is that time frame in 6 months' time? How much am I gonna be willing to still extend that? So there was a look, it wasn't easy looking through and figuring it out, but a lot of thought went into it. But and again, it's a decision of council. We're letting you know that in November, December, we went out for the exact same kind of truck that the utility is looking for. We got this pricing from Fair Isle Ford. Fair Isle Ford has agreed that they would give us 3 more at that price. But if you're not comfortable with that, we can re-tender.
Okay, I'll second it to put it forward for the discussion
Sure.
with council, because I think it's a council decision, so.
That's a good point.
So that's gonna delay it.
Sorry, what do you mean? So, okay.
No.
All I'm saying is just refuse it right now.
Okay, so if we refuse it, that was gonna
That's
be
what
my
I'm
second
saying.
question.
Refuse
If
it
we can
right now.
refuse it right now, then I won't move it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't know we could do that.
But actually, it will go on to council because you can't make that decision, but we put in the bottom that this committee did not
Okay.
recommend it,
Okay.
but it still goes
Still
forward.
goes to council,
You-
okay.
The 3 of you can't make a decision for council, but we
True.
add at the
Okay.
bottom that this committee did not recommend it, but it goes forward to council for them to make the decision.
So for the record, I will retract,
Second.
second the motion. And
Just say no.
I will not support the motion based on the procurement rules that we should follow. So there will be my thing to.
We just reject the resolution. Don't need a resolution for that.
Well, I mean, we
Still
we
goes
put
through
it,
with
we
the
put it in our recommendation and again, at a committee level,
Yep.
that way you don't have 4 people who are deciding what might be a different decision between 10 or 11 people in the other room.
Let's be consistent, that's what I wanna do, and I
Okay.
think that's what you said also, Chair.
For sure.
That okay?
Yep, no. Thank you. No, that's good. Good discussion to have.
Lots of good ones today. Okay, now we're going, dropping down to the budget, operational budget.
Wellfield, Forest.
Field forestry.
Dropped into that one.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, Alistair's unavailable, so I'll do my best to walk you through the report. So this is our forestry management plans for the Wellfield properties. Purpose here is to inform council and committee of the completed forestry management plans for the Wellfield properties. The recommendation we're seeking is council pass a resolution to endorse the forestry management plans. Some of the details here, so city staff have continued to work in partnership with the Nature Conservancy of Canada to promote the protection of the utilities wellfield sites. In 2024, the Nature Conservancy of Canada provided funding to create forestry management plans for all the properties owned by the Utility City Corporation that fall within the wellfield protection areas. The McPhail Woods Ecological Forestry Project was contracted to create these plans. After several revisions, the plans were completed in December of 2024. The forestry management plans are one of the primary tools used to ensure a forest remains healthy, vibrant, and resilient in the face of climate change. They also inform us how to manage forests in a way that protect and promote biodiversity, wildlife habitat, as well as the social and cultural role of forests. Forest management plans assess the current state of the forest, set goals and visions for the future state of these areas, and prescribe active management practices to assist in forest restoration. The forest management plans created for the wellfield sites are divided into different sections for each geographic area. This includes Brackley, Union, Suffolk, and Milton Vale. These areas were divided into distinct stands and unique treatment recommendations. All the recommended actions are prioritized from high to low over 3 periods of time. So 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, and 11 to 15 years. Adopting these plans will show the public and the NCC that the city is committed to sustainably managing natural areas with the well fields to protect the city's water source. Healthy forests play a crucial role in maintaining clean drinking water. They act as a natural filter, absorbing and slowly releasing water into streams and rivers, removing pollutants and regulating water flow, and ultimately contributing to better water quality for the city of Charlottetown. Essentially, the more forest cover, the cleaner the water source is likely to be. Council endorsement will also help support applications to secure funding for implementing the recommended work. The province of PEI's Forest Enhancement Program is an example of one that they could seek funding through. So there's no financial implications to date. If these were to be endorsed, we would look at what that plan looks like and what financial commitment is to move forward. Endorsement of these will help us seek funding as well. And attached to that are the treatment summaries. I will send out to the committee the full report. It's, I think, a couple hundred pages long, so I didn't want to amend it to this. But
Nice.
the recommendations and prioritizations have been attached for your perusal. There's various options and timeframes with those. So that's what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Go ahead, Council.
Yeah, Josh, if you could just, in a couple words or less, summarize that. Is this getting into that program? Remember we had a lot of discussion about this last year with this. And I think we might have been confused as to what the program was or what we were committing to.
NCC?
Yeah, I thought it was last year. We had some very similar debates. And I think when it all came out, when we understood, we agreed that we were misinterpreting what it was. So this is just in a nutshell, what is this for us? I guess you read a lot there, but it's like I'm lost as to what this really, what are you asking us to commit to here?
Absolutely. So through the chair to Councillor Matar, the discussion last year was on the OECM designation. That's the other effective area. Basically, that was on conservation areas that are not traditional areas per se. And that designation just allowed us to publicly say that we're protecting those natural areas, signify to the province that, you know, we're taking an active role in that, and they can use those lands towards their goals for, protection of natural areas. They do have percentages they're looking for, so that's where that discussion was. This plan is how to manage our wellfield sites in a ecological, and resilient fashion. That way we can remove invasive species, we can replant more native species, kind of thin out areas. That way we can help with maturing the forests that are there, a little bit of successional growth, and just make it a more ecologically stable environment. So
We have to be, we have to be a part of that to get that funding then too from the provincial government? Is that how we have to be tied to this? Is that how I understood that?
no, I don't believe that's tied to this at all. But we are partnered with the NCC, and they, through the Nature Conservancy of Canada, they've provided funding to go out and create these reports.
And the reason I said that, John, I said council endorsement will also help for support applications to secure funding for implementing the recommended work through, for instance, the PEI Forest Enhancement Program. So that's what I'm saying. So in other words, we have to endorse this in order to take advantage of certain things to address what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So all
So,
good. I just wanted to wrap just my head around that, so it sounds all positive and benefits our well fields and through some funding and programming and we're gonna.
I think what Josh was going after, Josh, page 12, strategic alignment, make sustainability, community resilience, climate change management and mitigation foundational criteria in which to base on infrastructure investment decisions, correct?
Yep, correct.
Summed up.
I'll move it.
Great,
Second.
second?
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Jarrett, second by Councillor, or Mayor Brown, getting tired now.
Sorry, man, that's a lot of questions.
Tries to keep it all going. Okay,
Draft budget, holy smokes.
Any increases, Richard? I didn't look at it that thoroughly.
Not the manager.
Oh, yeah, now he's washing his
I think
hands.
there's a kind of together thing here now. Ready to go, Josh?
Absolutely.
Stepping up for a cup of tea there.
Perfect, so thank you, Chair. This next report is our 2025-2026 draft operational budget. Attached is the complete budget, for kind of our reference. So report details, I didn't plan on going through line by line, there are several pages of lines. It's if we look at line per line, it's the same budget as our previous years, just with our updated and refined numbers. But if there's questions, we can go through that. I'll just go through the report quickly here for some of the highlights and new initiatives, and then we can have a discussion as arises. So the water and sewer utility draft 25-26 operational budget is attached. So contained within that operational budget are the approved budget numbers from 24-25. So those are our last year's numbers, or current fiscal's numbers for our reference. We also have the current operational forecast with expenditures as of November 2024. And as well, we have the proposed 25-26 budget numbers. So the proposed budget for 25-26 is slightly greater this year. This is due to increases in wages and benefits. That comes through our collective agreements. So those are kind of a fixed increase. We have inflation of fuel, oil, and electricity costs, and just the pricing of materials and supplies. Everything has gone up this year. So the budget document shows the areas of increase in areas where decrease were possible. We've gone through and tried to identify areas where we could tighten up a little bit. That way we could soften a little bit of the increase. So the main drivers for increases are listed below, and these are not exact numbers, but they're rounded to the nearest thousand, just for simplicity's sake in the report. So our heating fuel is $10,000 increase, electricity is $65,000. Our water infrastructure repairs and maintenance, $65,000. Repairs and building maintenance, $78,000. Chemicals is $27,000. And extraordinary expenses, $150,000. So throughout this budget, areas for some decreases or savings were identified, in total to be approximately $165,000. So if we take into account the increases and some areas of decrease, the net increase is about $268,000 or 1.7% over our 24-25 numbers. So in addition to the operational expenses there, the utility is proposing several new positions. So the first position, and they're ordered kind of in, they're in order of, I don't wanna say necessity, but in preference. Works field supervisor at the wastewater treatment plant, so this would be a new position, reporting to the superintendent of the wastewater treatment plant. This would be a first level management position, providing technical and interpersonal support to the superintendent. It would provide for division of management tasks, provide continuity of management when superintendent is away, and increase personnel resiliency. The second position we're seeking is electrical and instrumentation technician. This is with the utility. This new position would report to the superintendent of the utility, with the modernization and automation of system components within the distribution and collection components. This requires more technical expertise to troubleshoot and repair. This position would align with service continuity and increased resiliency. As well, the third position is technician 1 for the utility. So this would be an additional, not a new, but additional technician for utility. This would increase capacity for our inspection, testing, locates, leak detection, work layout, and system maintenance. And then the fourth position is technician 2 at the wastewater treatment plant. So this would be an additional position, increased capacity for maintenance repair. It would decrease overtime requirements and distribute on-call and standby duties, as well as provide successional planning. The operational cost or anticipated cost for these 4 positions is approximately $345,000. So this would increase the operational budget by another 2.2%. There was an error there where we see $733,000. That should be $613,000. As well, the 4.6 should be 3.9%. So that would be over the 24-25 approved numbers. If that was approved as is, kind of we'd look to balance expenditures against anticipated revenue. So the water and sewer rates would need to increase by 2.2% if we were to not approve any of the additional positions. If the additional positions were approved, or if all of them were approved, we would look at a 4.5% increase on the water and sewer rates, and this would accommodate the positions as well as the operational increases. So I know there's a lot to unpack there, so I'm more than willing to answer questions.
Any questions, anyone?
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
You all got in line, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Councilor Chair.
No, I'm just trying to drop down the spreadsheet here. I'm looking at the original budget from 24-25. Sorry, this document is just all over the place.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I may not be able to answer it, but anyways. I'm looking at, was it originally 8 million and then it got, no, that's to date, then it was 15,786. Is that what the original budget was, Richard? On that?
24-25.
Correct.
15,786,000.
And we're looking to increase by 432. Is that the, is that what we're looking to increase by?
So that's correct. And then the next column over is our mitigation or areas we can decrease the original budget numbers. So that in bracket 165,260, that would be a negative value. So that would decrease the 432.
To 345?
No,
Okay, so,
the 345 is the anticipated cost for those positions.
yeah,
That is not accounted for in the total of the 16.0 or 16,054,323. It was omitted from the finance sheet for these discussions.
okay, I'm trying to understand, you're asking for about $345,000 in additional wages for 4 positions. And what are the other additional operational increases other than standard CPI increase through wages and such? Is there any big ticket items? Cause you're suggesting we may have to do a 4.5% increase in rates? Is that what in order to achieve the 4 new positions at the very least?
If we wanted the 4 new positions, correct. So within that document, in the second column on the right-hand side is our budget change. And it highlights areas of increase or areas where we have decreased. So if we look at page 2 within that document, and we go to our permanent wages union, its original budget was 1.58 or 55 million, and we're seeing an increase of 103,000, almost 104,000.
And that's just normal increase, you mean?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then as well, any increases to our salary and wages results in increases to our pension contributions, our WCB contributions. And then likewise, our overtime rates go up with those salary increases, so our overtime gets to be more expensive.
So let's just say that's an area, you know, we have, that's just, I guess, part of business, you know, the increase in the wages go up due to that, and then, but I'm looking at from an operational perspective, is there anything that is being asked to increase if, you know, cause if this comes down to the chair, you know, to deciding if we're going to increase rates this year. I think we did an increase last year, did we not, to get up to the CPI? Did we do a 3% or, we did a big jump last year to get caught up to?
I think the year before was a larger increase, but last year was.
Last year, they were looking for
CPI.
5,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we
Two
agreed.
point five, was it?
So we, yeah, okay. We're back in that range again, if not to 4 at the high, 4.5 at the highest if these positions. Again, I'm not seeing if there's any operational increases in other than wages. Is there anything from any other expenditures or line items?
So if you look at
To see the budget
page
page, right?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yellow, right? There's a $60,000 for sludge handling fees. You're asking for $60,000 more?
At the first page would be your revenue, so that's an increase in revenue there.
Sorry, okay,
Yeah.
I'm on the wrong page here, yeah,
Yep.
you're right, sorry, it's just spreadsheet, I'm just trying to.
So the fourth page within that document, if we looked at power under electric, there's an operational increase of almost 54,000. Likewise, if we go down to service contracts, there's operational increase of 24,000. Just for some of the larger items, it's harder to pinpoint exact ones because there's several items there that are smaller and lots of small things add up to a big thing.
So the bulk of all this then, Josh, come from those 4 positions?
Yes, exactly, yeah, so if we, if the 4 positions were not approved, you could get by with either an increase equal to CPI, or if the direction was to not do that, we would have to revisit the budget and look for areas to tighten up again, to account for about 2% or 2.2% of the budget.
Okay, so that essentially what I was trying to get to. Like, if we don't approve this, are we still looking at an increase based on other operational things, Chair? Or can it be status quo? Like, are we gonna be able to go into a non-increase in, other than CPI possibly? And if we don't wanna do CPI, then we gotta further cut that down.
Yeah, so this is the first draft budget here. It can be looked at and asked to come up with some cuts here. The thing I don't wanna get into is what we get into last year. Your worship, was the we decided on certain numbers and then we come back, we looked at a 400 surplus, an 800, 1.2 and then 2, right? So then we made our decisions on a $400,000 surplus or less, right? And then when the actual numbers did come in, we had a very large surplus, So I don't wanna go down that road again this year. I wanna make sure we know what we're voting on and exactly the numbers that we're gonna increase or status quo before we make the decision. So this is a good start, but I think there's gotta be some other work done here first. And that would have to be known what type of surplus we're getting, or a deficit. I know we're not supposed to get a deficit, so there's gonna have to be more work done. And that's why we're here. What do you wanna do? Do you wanna accept it and move on? Do you wanna look at it? Go.
I'm concerned, for me, if what I've essentially heard, if we wanna support more new positions, or if that's what's being forwarded, it's inevitably gonna drive an increase in the rates, right?
Yeah.
To get that, so anywhere from 2% to 4.5. That's what I heard, so that's really, are we at a time to do that? How do we weigh that against the absolute need for these positions? We were, I hate saying it, but going back to almost right to the very start, we were taking HR funds and allocating them out to other projects because we couldn't fill them. Now we wanna get 4 more positions. I don't know if we'll fill those, so it's a gamble too, right? Cause we don't know if they'll fill them. If we budget for it and then put an increase out there, we don't get those positions, we've increased the rates for hopes of getting those positions in.
Exactly.
Anyways,
Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it's, when you're talking about budgets, guys, like, it's pretty hard to read this stuff here, like, I always look at the budget book. But if I go to page 35, Josh, you're saying that we're taking in more revenue. Management is recommending that will be 15,640,000, only 25,000 more dollars in revenue? That's all we got? As it says here and this is up to the 8 months. So it says management forecast, NGNT is management forecast, right? That's you?
Oh, correct, yep.
So we're only going up with all the new installs and all the new customers, we're only going up by 25,000?
So that'd be the forecast for the 24-25.
Yeah.
But for 25-26, with rates and anticipated services offered, there's about 431,000 worth of increased revenue.
So I'm looking at, is that the green side of the spreadsheet?
That's the right side, yeah. So you're,
So if I look at the green side, it goes up to 16,052,000, right?
correct, yeah. That's anticipated revenue for 25-26.
So then your expenses, if I go down to page 40, management forecasts are a little higher, expenses are a little higher, correct?
16,054,000 versus 16,052,000, yeah.
Not much, okay. But again, every year we do this, like if I look at last year, I think the audit statements showed better than this. But for 23-24, we budgeted $15,643,000 for, is that for expenses? Yeah, and it came in at $13,875,000. That was 23-24. Right? So we had a surplus of 1.5 million. And for this year, you're projecting more, a debt of what? Like last year, I think Richard projected $165,000 deficit. See that?
Correct.
So we keep getting the numbers off. And just to add 4 more people, we have to increase it by 4.5%? Wow.
Based on the budget numbers, and it is a hard number to come up with. The forecast is, you know, I don't wanna say a guess, but it is a mathematical estimation of what we think's coming in versus what's going out. And until we get kind of our final statements in the end of March or even later until all the invoices are finalized, we won't know 100% what the outcome is, whether there's a deficit, surplus, or whether it was, exactly balanced. So it is the best you can. Like Councillor Matart had mentioned in one of the previous reports here, is that vacancy management, or that vacancy makes a big difference too. So if we have several positions that weren't filled, there could be hundreds of thousands in the difference there. So that could look like a surplus, but if they were filled, it wouldn't be. Same thing where is if we have more maintenance occur than we anticipate, then that would be an over budget expenditure, and there's areas where we can't not do work. So it is a difficult position to be in. And I do 100% agree that you don't wanna do anything that's unjustified. But at the end of the day, you make a plan, you try to do as accurately and as best fiscally responsible as you can, and then we manage that expectation throughout the year.
So your guesstimation for an increased revenue for 25-26 is about 400,000, right? So would that cover off the new positions? Why would we have to raise rates 4.5%?
There's a $432,000 increase
Just in salaries or in services?
in expenses, so that's your salaries, your services, your contracts.
Again, that's a guesstimation too.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yep.
Okay, so it's not fixed signs on.
No, exactly, yeah. And then we don't know what power and oil will do into the future, like if they took a decrease, that's something that, would be in our benefit, but in all likelihood, they'll increase, and, it's kinda works against us in that instance.
So these positions, last question, Mr. Chair, so these positions are all new initiatives, right?
Correct. Yep,
They go to the list of all the other new initiatives, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll wait till then.
How technical are those positions, like the difficulty to
so.
advertise them tomorrow? What kind of, any sense of what kind of traction you'd get?
So three of those positions I anticipate filling pretty readily. The first one, which is the works field supervisor, that one I anticipate would have difficulty filling. But the other three, the lower three, I imagine we could fill those quite readily.
Put it forward as a new initiative, I guess.
But, Mr. Chair, at the least, there's gonna be an increase, 2.5%, right?
2.2 perhaps? And that's based off
CPI though.
the draft budget, so we're always looking at it and refining it. That's not a final document, so as numbers come in, we'll adjust and pivot.
Okay. Give it up.
No,
Question? Any questions, Sean? So this is not, we're not approving this, right? Are we gonna?
No, this is draft, so this is for our discussion. and basically to bring to your awareness that, you know, we are looking for positions. I don't anticipate having all of them approved, or, you know, it kind of comes down to where that falls with committee and council. And then, but we're working to continually refine this budget as new numbers come in and new priorities come in, so.
Questions? No? All right. No questions? Okay. And we'll go to, there's no new business today.
G, update,
Aha. EFG.
update on Councilor Twill's question.
There we go. As we all know, I'm on the hot seat again on the council meeting. So I'm hoping for some help and some updates and new questions or new answers to my questions. How are we doing?
Absolutely. No, thank you, Chair. So with the fiber optic contract, we are still in negotiations. It is very close to having a document that we can present to you. I think there was one or two smaller points of contention that we sent back to the contractor, and they are gonna review and come back to us with their lawyer. But we are very close, and at the next meeting, if we don't have an actual agreement that's amicable to both of us, we're close enough that we'll be able to present what we have to the committee and work forward through that. So we can provide that at the next meeting and discuss that. We'll set aside time for that. But right now, it's very close, and there's only one or two little items, and then we'll be set.
So just to get a timeline, like, I know we ask every month and it goes back to our legal and their legal, and is there like, okay, here's a document for you to look at? Is there a week or two to look at it, or do they just look at it at our convenience and get back to you?
So both parties are very interested in pushing this over the line. They are very invested in having this done as expediently as possible. So that's what they're seeking to do. So there's no holdup on either side of, well, let's push it, you know, kind of push that to the side, we'll get to it when we get to it. There is a sense of urgency there for both sides, and we're pushing that forward. As far as timelines to, you gotta get back to us, there's been no timelines thrown, other than, you know, there is an urgency here, you know, get back as soon as possible.
Okay, that's good for me. Anybody else have any? Yeah, great.
So our lawyer is Cox and Palmer.
Correct.
Right. Who's UCC's lawyer?
I'd have to dig
Is
that
it
up.
Cox Palmer, Stuart McKillary?
It's not Cox and
Joel
Palmer,
Pink.
it's, I'm trying to think.
How about Halifax?
Is it Pink?
No.
Don't say that.
That's all right. Just wanna ask, I, you know, if you look at that IRU, right? It was talked about earlier, you know, following the money with our receivables. Someone's gonna have to monitor how money's collected from customers and how we get our royalty payment. So will that be something Pauline's gonna do?
No, I believe the contract speaks to that, is how we'll monitor it. As far as who would receive that information, we've yet to solve that out, but that will all be part of that contract.
That'll be part of the discussion when you take it back.
Yeah.
From the two lawyers. Oh, okay, good, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect. Any questions? No? No? Any questions anywhere? Okay, introduction of new business, and there is none, so.
Motion to move.
Motion to move by Mayor Brown, second by Councilor Matari.
Good meeting, thank you guys, thank you guys.
Package of